Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Spiraling Podcast. I am your host, Jackson Wallace. I got my friend, my buddy, my pal, Jason Holland with us. But Jason, it's not just us. It's not, we're not boring the audience, which is us too, right? We brought on some, actually our most popular guest so far. We had the most plays with him. We brought on licensed counselor Harold Boggs. Welcome back, Harold. How are you?
I'm just great. Thank you very much. Nice to be here.
Thank you for coming back onto the show. We had a lot of good love coming in from our last episode with you, and so we thought we'd bring you back and just catch up with you and see how you're doing.
We're busy. My life hasn't really changed very much, except we've gotten busier. It's my privilege to help people with their anxiety and stress at this stressful time.
Yeah, a very stressful time. I was actually curious to kind of pick your brain a little bit about everything that's happened with quarantine and all that has come with it. How were you affected by COVID-19?
Well, it's there's been a steady increase in the clientele at our center because our center was designated as a essential business. We didn't close. Some of my colleagues worked from home, and some came into the office. I was in the office every day. About half of my clients I see virtually, and the other half I see face to face in the office. And so I wear masks at the grocery store and that kind of thing. Clean the grocery cart and just try to use common sense.
Right.
Yeah, common sense. It is a fact that the virus is very, very contagious, but using common sense and washing the hands and doing those things makes a lot of sense. We did spend some time down at Matagorda Beach. That's a good time.
Okay.
This is a good time to be at the beach, and Matagorda wasn't crowded. The water was very nice. So,
that's good.
Yeah, we've had some good moments.
Right. Excellent. Well, thanks for coming back on. We appreciate it. I know last time we kind of dove pretty deep into the addiction side of things, as well as everything else, and we talked a little bit about you and Jason, kind of how you guys met and your sponsor. I thought we'd kind of maybe dive more into your work on this episode in particular. As the episode before, we had Rich on, and Rich was kind of providing his philosophy and a little bit of his background. I was curious as to your specific philosophies when it comes to your patients. Like, is there something specific that you do with each patient? Like, do you kind of approach it differently based on the person, or do you approach them with kind of a template, if you will?
Well, there are some commonalities between people, but each of us is unique.
Right.
Each person has a unique body chemistry.
Right.
So, like if they go to the psychiatrist will try one medication, and it may have an opposite effect on the person.
Right.
I've met lots of people that report that they don't have the correct response to medications. Well, it's the same thing with treatment.
Mm-hmm.
And so my approach is called solution focused.
Okay.
I like to focus on solutions, and there are many different ways to escape reality, and that's really the problem. Is when to quote. So let me quote Dr. Scott Peck, the great psychiatrist, decades ago, said, "Mental health is a commitment to reality at all cost."
Yeah.
A commitment to reality at all cost. And compulsive behavior and drug problems, and those are an escape from reality at all cost. So we all need to escape some. There are healthy ways to escape, but when the escape becomes habitual, then we've got a mental illness known as addiction.
Right.
I really don't like the word addiction. I prefer compulsive behavior and dependency.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and that quote that I just made was of Dr. Patrick Carnes. When escaping becomes habitual, it is a mental illness, known as addiction. So, there are lots of different ways of escaping, but we have to get to know each patient and figure out what is behind their need to escape. Is it loneliness? Is it fear? Is it procrastination? Are there relationship problems? Were they traumatized in the past, either as children or as young adults? And so that's where the individuation comes in, and we get to know people, and then we launch into recovery.
Yeah.
Recovery activities. There's 3 big phases to recovery.
Okay.
Phase 1 is complete abstinence. It's very important to not dabble around with it, to take it seriously and completely quit whatever the compulsive behavior is. That phase 2 is learning how to stay stopped. Once you've stopped, it's 20 times as hard to stay stopped.
Right.
And the reason it's hard is because of our selfishness and our pride.
Okay.
Those 2 qualities undergird all addiction problems and compulsive behavior. The best way I've found to level that pride and get some humility and end the selfishness and get some empathy is working the 12 steps.
Right.
They were borrowed from the Bible in 1935.
Really?
And
I didn't know that.
I'm a Christian counselor, which means I don't push religion, but
Right.
I am equipped to, if people understand the Bible, there's a lot of wisdom there. So working the 12 steps with someone to guide you through is part 2 of recovery. And that way we get some humility and we get some empathy back in our lives, so we can think of other people. We're not so selfish, and that's important. But that's part 2. The most important part of the whole game is part 3, where I reach back and I help someone newer work their 12 steps.
Yeah.
My sponsor and I reach back and we help a new guy work his steps. That's when my steps click in, not until. We have a motto: we only get to keep what we give away.
Interesting.
So in its own way, that's what this podcast is about. You guys are giving back. And that's what we need to do if we're going to keep it. So, those are the 3 parts. That is, of course, reaching back and helping someone is step 12. So I see the first 11 steps as about 25% of the program.
Okay.
And step 12 is 75% of the program.
Wow.
Very important to be able to give back. As you could imagine, it helps us anchor what we've really learned. When we learn to teach it and give it away, then that cements it into our lives.
Yeah.
We get to keep it.
You see it from a new perspective, right? From a new
Yes.
viewpoint. That kind of helps you keep everything tight together. When you mentioned in phase 1, you mentioned stopping with the abstinence, right? With the substance.
Yes.
Is it easier to go cold turkey, or is it like a gradual process? Like, what is there like one that you recommend?
Well, I'm really glad you asked that question because the fact of the matter is that alcohol is the most dangerous drug in the world.
Right.
Takes more lives, and anyone who drinks too much too fast, the college students that guzzle the vodka,
right,
it can kill you on the spot. It shuts off the signal from the brain to the lungs, and people look like they're passed out, but they're actually suffocating.
Wow.
It happens all the time. Every day there are more deaths from alcohol overdose than all the drug overdoses combined. But it's never in the news.
Right.
So drinking alcohol is dangerous. A lot of teenagers don't make it. I know personally 6 families who rushed their teenager to the hospital, and they just barely survived the situation. Almost died, dodged a bullet. So drinking is dangerous. Quitting is also dangerous. If you know someone who's drinking every day and they want to quit, tell them, do not quit cold turkey.
Okay.
You can have a seizure and die.
Wow.
I lost a patient in 2011 that way. Fellow was very, very funny, nice guy, 51 years old, and he quit cold turkey. He was afraid of his probation officer.
Okay.
He quit cold turkey, had a seizure, didn't make it. Very sad. I helped with the funeral.
Oh man, that's rough.
Very, very sad loss. In the prime of his life, age 51.
Yeah, that's why they stress if you are going to quit drinking cold turkey that you need to be in a treatment center where they can monitor you and give you the correct medication in order for you to get off or go through detox.
That's right. There's a medication that prevents seizures. So if a person's going to quit after drinking daily, they need to see a doctor, get that medication. Or there's another way to do that, and that's to taper off over a 2-week period.
Okay.
Now, I'm not a doctor, so you need to talk to your doctors. And but it's not advised to quit cold turkey.
Yeah. No, I was curious about that. So it's a 2-week period and taper down in consultation with your doctor for however they have it. I have another question here. It's have you seen one addiction that was birthed from another one? Right, like somebody is addicted to a certain substance, but then that has taken them on to something else.
Well, that we do see people switch addictions often.
Okay.
A lot of guys that I've worked with and been friends with have quit their alcohol, but they switch over to a different substance. I did that myself, actually. I switched to cocaine. Really smart. A lot of people drop dead from cocaine. It will stop your heart, just like that. There's also a spiritual element to this, which it really comes into play with addiction switching, and that's that especially for folks who believe in God. When we believe in God, the enemy's really scared of us and threatened by us, and he wants to take us out. First, he wants to ruin all of our credibility, and he wants to destroy our families. Then he wants to take us out altogether. So we've got to keep that in mind. There are many things that fit together as far as compulsive behavior and dependency. A lot of people depend on a glass of vodka before bed in order to sleep. That's a dependency.
Yeah.
Some people think that they can only have fun at the party if they have a couple of drinks. That's a dependency. The fun is in you, it's not in the alcohol. and so they'll quit alcohol, but they'll start up some other thing. The problem is really escaping reality. And when that escape becomes habitual, it's a mental illness. And that brings up another type of complication, and that is when people have a mental illness and they have a dependency on chemicals. And they're in really a tough double bind. And I always advise them to see their doctor, take their medications for their mental illness, and do not stop those medications. Even if they're chemically dependent, they need to continue their medications. Now, a lot of treatment centers are not that experienced with all of this, and so they advise people to get off of their medications, and that's irresponsible. There are several support groups that are called dual diagnosis support groups.
Okay. Yeah.
And they understand what it's like to have a mental problem and to have a chemical dependency at the same time. And we can be very successful taking our meds and getting away from the alcohol and recreational drugs.
Right. Yeah, you can do both, because sometimes, I think we talked about this a little bit last episode, I think, Jason, which was, it's got to be kind of tailored to the individual, right? Sometimes taking an individual off their medication, cold turkey straight away, can have an adverse effect.
Oh yes. The medical doctors will tell you that it's important to titrate down. That's cut back little by little. A lot of the medications have about a 3-week half-life, so just quitting it all of a sudden can be really problematic.
Yeah.
You got to taper down. When you switch medications with your psychiatrist, he will or she will cut one down, cut one back, add another one in, and the two overlap. And once in a while, the psychiatrist will require what's called a medication holiday, where you quit everything to kind of clean your system out and see where you are at. Because little by little, our body chemistry changes.
Yeah.
Decade after decade. So you're not the same person that you were 10 years ago.
Right. How does addiction to alcohol differ from other substances? Like, is it, I mean, I'm not, and forgive my ignorance, right? But you were talking about kind of body chemistry and things like that. Does it affect you differently? I assume it does, based on the different substances.
Well, the real problem is the habitual escaping. But alcohol does different things than cocaine. Cocaine does different things than marijuana.
Right.
Marijuana is not harmless. It's a powerful medication. And the problem really comes in when people are self-medicating their emotional pain or their physical pain. We sometimes think we're pretty smart, and so we do things that are outside of the doctor's guidelines. Yeah. And that's a lot of people get in trouble because the medications are very, very complicated. So it takes years of medical study, and then they're constantly, the big pharmaceutical companies are coming up with new things all the time that are really wonderful, miraculous solutions. Some of the most difficult cases that I've had are individuals that suffer with voices in their heads, and it's called schizophrenia.
Right.
And it's a very difficult problem with the medications that have been developed to help those people are just fantastic. Without the medications, the people suffer a lot. And they still suffer even with the medications. The medications do not eliminate all of the voices in their heads, but they quiet them down to a point where they can function on a daily basis.
Right.
And the people I've met, when their stress goes up, then the voices get louder. A news reporter was going to do a program on what it's like to have schizophrenia. So the people hooked up a pair of Bluetooth headphones and programmed and created a tape of what it's like to have two voices in your head talking to each other and screaming all the time. The reporter couldn't take it for an hour.
Wow.
And people that have this mental illness have it every waking hour. So they really suffer a lot, even with good medications. And so what we want to do is they help them find the right combination of medications.
Right.
And then take their medications like clockwork. Medication compliance or non-compliance is the biggest problem that we've got in the medical world because the medications have side effects. Mm-hmm. So, and alcohol has side effects.
Right.
So, I used to drink from the age of 20 to the age of 40. I drank heavily. I was trying to self-medicate. My childhood trauma. I was sexually abused ages 8, 9, 10, 11.
Yeah.
And so I started drinking, and that was a great way to escape from that trauma from childhood. But it was great for about 10 minutes. Mm-hmm. Heavy drinking is great for about 10 minutes, right?
Yeah, then you don't remember anything else.
And then the side effects. Alcohol attacks the brain, and things start to go numb. Parts of the brain. The first part that seems to go numb is the vision center in the brain. So your vision gets blurry, and you start seeing double. Also, the speech center gets affected, and people kind of talk a little bit slower. They kind of slur their speech. The hearing center gets affected by alcohol. And I don't know if you've ever noticed it, but at parties or in bars, the people that are really inebriated are really loud because they can't hear. The balance center's affected, and so people, when they've had several drinks, they're going to weave around. And so that's really what's happening, is that the brain gets attacked. Well, all the drugs and the medications and the helpful ones and harmful ones all do the same thing. They attack the brain. And so that's basically, they all have a similar effect. They attack the brain in different ways. And but here's the beautiful thing about it. Once we get in recovery, we realize that all those wonderful chemicals, the dopamine, the serotonin, they're created in the brain. The human brain is a chemical factory. What I'm getting at is that the happiness is in you. It's not in the chemical or the drug or the alcohol.
Right.
It's in you. There are other ways to access those same good feelings. And so recovery is all about substituting a healthy way of escaping for the unhealthy, the drinking or drugging or porn. Porn affects the brain just like heroin. Really? We have new brain research. We used to, decades ago, we thought porn was harmless. And now that the brain research is in, we realize it is not. That's an addiction that people switch to.
Before we dive off into that subject, I want to just reiterate to the listeners again, for people with dual diagnosis.
Yes.
Because I speak for myself, dealing with a dual diagnosis, and Harold, you and I work tremendously hard at keeping me accountable, making sure I'm not doing anything else, because the drugs that I'm on are very powerful drugs, and the only way for me to stay honest in my sobriety is to talk about it. The other thing that I want to encourage our viewers to do is, if you don't feel right, psychologically, or you're having trouble sleeping, even if you're an addict, don't feel like you're seeking drugs by asking for help, because I just experienced that myself with not being able to sleep for several days at a time. Reached out to my doctor, told him, the first thing he asked was, have you had a drink? No, I haven't had a drink. And he asked to talk to my wife, asked Kristen if I had been drinking. So it's an accountability. I didn't get my feelings hurt that he was asking that. I want him to. I want him to.
Yeah.
Because if I'm going to get the help that I need, I got to be held accountable. And that's with any addict, or that's with anybody that has a dual diagnosis. You have to be held accountable for what you put in your body, and make sure that you're being held accountable for it.
Right.
So
that's right. And the key is in the details, and we need lots of teamwork.
Yeah.
So that's why you and your wife are such a great team together.
Yeah, I want to see how she puts up with me, but
That's a conversation for a later date, I think, right?
yeah.
That's true. And we've got to mention chronic pain.
Yeah.
Because that is also that produces chemicals in the body, and it's very, very important to be able to treat your pain properly.
Yeah, and that's in the book. I talk about the turning point after my cancer diagnosis.
Yeah.
Was the building up of tolerance to morphine.
Wow.
And I remember I had several conversations with Harold. I think Harold and I were talking almost daily after I was diagnosed with cancer.
Oh yeah.
And it was one of those things that I told Harold. I said, I think I'm building up a tolerance to morphine, and I'm scared that I'm going to go down the wrong path. And we quickly took a different direction, and it turned out for the best. I got off of the morphine. I got off the morphine cold turkey.
Yep, you can do that.
Yeah. And but that was the best thing that could happen to me. After being sober for 3 or 4 months,
right.
And then you get hit with cancer, and the doctors are giving you whatever you want to keep you as painless as possible. Keeping the pain away, but just giving you whatever it takes to keep that.
Right.
And that's not good for an addict. That's not good for anybody. How many people switch over to heroin after having back surgery?
Or street drugs, yeah. Yep, that happens a lot. That we have an opioid crisis in America.
Yeah.
And it's real, and it takes out a lot of people. And the pharmaceutical company, the one that I've studied recently, the makers of OxyContin, are paying out millions and millions, billions under the table, and not really minding it. They're not feeling it because they make so much on the medication, OxyContin. So get in line if you've seen an injustice. It's a big problem, but chronic pain is a big problem too. And one of the main problems with it is that it doesn't allow you to sleep. Sleep is so important,
Absolutely necessary.
Yeah. My entire day circles around how well I slept the night before. I think anybody that's close to me has seen that if I don't have enough sleep, I'm not very very good to get along with. But I think Harold and I were talking on the pre-show about my high level of energy that I have, and it takes a lot. It takes a lot for people around me to be able to keep up with how fast I go.
Yes.
But it also is that much harder for me to sleep at night because I am bipolar.
Yes.
And my bipolar mood has kind of leveled out to being, during the day I'm more on the manic side.
Right.
And then at night it takes a high level of medication to knock me out because I just won't go to sleep if I don't take my medicine.
And sleep is so important.
Yeah.
So,
and I have to sleep 8 to 9 hours a night, or I'm not very
and your
good.
doctor is really aware of that and helps you with that.
Yeah. That was like last week. I was having some issues sleeping. Called him up and said, "Hey, I just need something for a couple nights."
That's it.
And he asked me what I wanted. Told him, and we talked about it. Called it in, and I'm out of the medicine. I don't have any withdrawals. I don't have any desire to go back to it.
Right.
Because it achieved its goal with me. It was let me sleep a couple nights.
Yeah, Rich, I think on the last episode, Rich called that getting through that acute distress.
Yeah.
You know, like going through just getting that little small hump just so you can kind of keep going.
Mm-hmm. That's why with a lot of, heroin, they have that other drug that they give it to them so that way they can...
Yeah, Suboxone.
Yeah.
Heroin, people that take heroin go up and down emotionally and physically during the day, every day, really big ups and downs. Mm-hmm. But when you switch to the synthetic heroin, the Suboxone, the methadone.
Yeah, methadone. That's what I was thinking about.
The methadone clinics. Suboxone is a drug that makes you not want alcohol. Oh. But methadone, it helps you be steady. You can drive on methadone. You can work a job. And it gets rid of the highs and lows from heroin. But it's also difficult to get off of after you've leveled off the highs and lows. It's a very complicated subject, and the psychiatrists really have the medications are miracles, but they're not easy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
for sure. We were talking about kind of like we're talking about the opioids, right? Like the
opioids are painkillers.
Yeah, we're talking about all that. We're talking about some of the heavy stuff, right? But I'm curious, what about it's just one beer? It's just a glass of wine? Does it have to be like heavy hitters to be addiction?
9 out of 10 people are what we call normies. They drink once in a while.
Right.
When they start to feel it, they stop. Mm-hmm. When I started to feel it, that's when I doubled down.
Right.
They drink and they don't have hangovers. When I drank, I had hangovers. They drink and they do not get behind the wheel. When I drank, I drove. I never ran over anyone, but it's just a miracle.
Yeah.
When normal people drink, they don't have blackouts. That's where you can't account for several hours or a night. Or you get up in the morning and you say, how did I get here and where is my car? That's a blackout. Well, normal drinkers don't have that. I did. So...
as I did.
Yeah. 9 out of 10 people drink normally. Mm-hmm. 1 out of 10 people have all those symptoms that I just described, blackouts and hangovers, and once they start, they can't predict where it'll stop.
Yeah.
Those are the ways that you measure this thing. So here is the statistical information about alcohol sales. the 9 out of 10 people that drink normally consume 1/10 of the alcohol consumed.
Really?
The 1 out of 10, like Jason and myself, drink 90% of the alcohol consumed.
Wow.
That tells the story right there.
Yeah. Drinking.
And we were talking about earlier in the last episode with Rich, we were talking about the different side effects of the drugs. For somebody who battled the codependency or the bipolar and alcohol abuse and drug abuse.
Yeah.
For me, it was at a different time during the day, I would do a different drug.
Yes.
To get up in the morning, it was cocaine. Cocaine up until 9, 10 o'clock at night when I started drinking. And then it was drink to get blackout drunk, because that's the only way I could come off the cocaine and get a good night's sleep.
Yeah.
Now take for granted that this was during a time period where I had a doctor that did not agree with my medications.
Okay.
And I think that's what really led down to my latest binge, which lasted a couple years. I had a psychiatrist that didn't agree with my medication that I was on, and took me off of my sleeping medicine, my mood stabilizer, and just had me on some basic drugs. For most people that have bipolar can take these drugs and be fine, but I had built up such a high tolerance to the medication that it really took a lot to keep me sane. Took me off of it, and I didn't read the warning signs and started heavily abusing cocaine, alcohol. Never really did anything else, but those were the two things that, I would do the cocaine in the morning to wake me up, all throughout the day, give me energy. And then at night, I would hit it hard with drinking. And there was a blackout drunk just about every single night.
And the interesting thing about drinking so that you can sleep is the fact that the interesting thing about drinking so you can sleep is that the substance changes your sleep level. So what we really are craving is that delta level sleep, that deep, restful sleep with the eye movements, the REM sleep. And so I've worked with people who quit drinking, and their body says, "Oh, finally, I can sleep, I can dream," and they finally get sleep. Like, I drank heavily for 20 years, and you're sleeping, but it's not the deep sleep your body really needs. Yeah.
Another subject I want to touch on with you, Harold, and this goes out for our listeners in the Department of Corrections that's listening in, but a lot of the mental health issues that people have, a lot of the addiction issues that people have, stem from an underlying cause. And most people, that underlying cause is trauma as a child.
Yeah.
I heard you and I have talked several times about sexual abuse, and you were sexually abused. I was sexually abused.
Yeah.
And a lot of people that I know that are either addicts or have mental health issues, or both, because I think one feeds into the other for most people, but comes from an underlying issue of some kind of trauma as a child. I talk about in my book, I didn't have the greatest childhood. It's probably because I was sexually abused and I was acting out. I didn't ask for help. I didn't talk about it. I felt ashamed. So I turned to drugs and alcohol at a young age, which most people would have said, look at Jason, he's just a troublemaker. But I was a troubled child. Yeah. And that just fed into my adulthood. And, Harold and I have been friends for a long time, and it took a long time for me to open up about it.
That's right. There's so much shame.
Yeah. And
I kept it a secret for almost 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I kept mine a secret for about 10 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not good for us.
Yeah, and it wasn't until I spent my time at Krause Residential Treatment Center. I did quite a bit of time there, and I opened up about it there, but I don't feel like I really treated the underlying issue while I was there. Just by talking about it, it didn't click with me. I still had a lot of anger. I had a lot of hate.
Yeah, that helps a little bit to talk about it, but then you've got to do the hard work of really getting in and doing therapy about it. Mm-hmm. Trauma healing therapy. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah, and it took a long time for me to overcome those issues. And I don't know if you remember this, but the issues that I had with my parents, I had to give them a funeral, and we acted that out.
Oh man!
And that's my relationship with my parents. It's gotten a lot better over the last couple of years. Since I did that, I don't expect things from my parents.
Yeah.
I want them to be a part of my life. I want them to be there for me, and they are. But I had to stop. Expressing it to them, because all I did when I was telling them that, hey, you don't spend enough time with me, I'd piss them off.
Right.
Yeah. So now I know I'm going to have a conversation with my dad a couple times a month. I might see him once a month, but that's the relationship now. Yeah. And it's great. I love it. It's better than not having parents.
Sure.
But that took a long time for me to really comprehend and get over.
Yeah.
So.
Well, then one of the reasons it's so difficult is that as children, we automatically blame ourselves for what happened to us. Mm-hmm. And that wasn't true. It wasn't your fault, the abuse. You didn't bring it on. There's nothing a kid can do that brings that on. Mm-hmm. They don't deserve that. But we automatically blame ourselves, and then there's all this shame, and we beat ourselves up. And I was pretty certain that there was no one I could trust, because my perpetrator was my half-brother. And we grew up as brothers. So you're living with this guy, and he's doing this off and on for 4 years.
Wow.
And your mom isn't protecting you, and your dad isn't protecting you, and you're a little kid, 8 years old, 3rd grade. What the heck? Yeah. What do you do? So most kids blame themselves for what happened. And they carry around the idea that they must be bad people and they deserve bad things. And so you self-medicate that with alcohol and cocaine. Then finally you go to a treatment center and they start to, what happened to me was I heard basically my story, or a very similar story, coming out of someone else's mouth. And that helped me a lot. I felt alone, and I felt like I was to blame, and I was beating myself up inside. So hearing my story come from someone else, I was able to say, wow, maybe I'm not alone. Maybe there's somebody I can trust.
Yeah.
And that's when the healing begins. Mm-hmm. It's very, very healing to be able to tell your story if you can trust the person. But if they're going to use it against you, then it's not healing at all. Yeah. It's more trauma. So got to find people we can trust.
Right. Have you had any, and again, I don't want to get into any like confidentiality issues or anything, but have you had any patients or people that you've helped out with sexual abuse?
Oh yeah, many.
Yeah.
And I could talk in general. I don't use any names or identifying information, but in generally speaking, one man, this was years ago, he was 30, and he came in, and what had happened was at the mall, when he was 14, he was at the mall with his friends, and some really nice-looking guy, gray hair, business suit, had approached him in the mall and had said, with a $20 bill, and said, "My grandson is exactly your size. I'm trying to get him a pair of jeans for his birthday. If you'll help me, we can get the exact right size for these jeans, and he'll be really happy on his birthday."
Okay.
Well, that sounded good to a 14-year-old.
Yeah.
Didn't sound like it would be any harm in that. So they went into the clothing store, found the pair of jeans, went into the dressing room, and as he was trying these jeans on, this man fondled his genitals.
Oh, good.
He was just frozen. He had no idea what to do. Then the man ran out of the dressing room, ran out of the store, and ran out of the mall. They never caught him.
Wow.
And so this young man was traumatized from that experience, and it affected his entire life from that point on. But by learning to talk about it, and for us being able to share our experience and really do the trauma healing, there's a therapy called eye movement therapy that's very, very helpful for trauma. And it works very quickly, and the results are durable. It's really amazing. It's approved by the Veterans Administration and the Department of Defense also for soldiers with PTSD. And so the initials for it are EMDR. EMDR. And so this guy his life was improved, every area, his relationships. He had a hard time with relationships with girlfriends, but after that he was healed. He found a girlfriend, and he got engaged, and they got married a year later. But there was a blockage there because of what happened at the mall. The bad guys often look very slick, very nice looking, very trustworthy. That's how they gain access to their victims, by being nice looking and friendly. A lot of sports coaches are perpetrators. A lot of bus drivers are perpetrators. And a lot of bad stuff goes on at the mall.
That's scary.
So folks, don't let your kids just hang around at the mall without a chaperone. It's irresponsible of you.
Yeah, wow. So you had this man approached you, and he told you about
what happened at the mall when he was 14, 16 years previous.
Right. So
and
how do you begin to help him? What is kind of like, is there like a certain protocol? Is there
and folks, I really want you to know that to really be a friendship, to form a friendship is what really works the best. And for you to be able to and willing to listen to people without condemnation, without judgment, and hear the story and empathize, that brings a lot of the healing. That's the first step. And that's what a therapist does, is listen without judgment. I show empathy, we connect, and that's the first step, is to really listen, really hear what they're saying, and how that all affected them. That's the first step. And decades ago, Carl Rogers pointed that out, that the relationship between the counselor and the client is the first step, and it's very, very important. The relationship does the work. So that's the main thing. And then there are some techniques, and with EMDR, there are eye movements, and combined with questions. And the person learns to disconnect the present from the past. because a lot of people who are traumatized in the past, that trauma keeps coming into the present.
Yeah.
And it really doesn't belong there. So part of what eye movement therapy does and other therapies, cognitive behavioral therapy, is it helps people distinguish between the past and the present. Yes.
Wow. That's scary and fascinating and all that.
It is.
All at the same time.
And folks can help one another very much, and it's not that hard. One of the main things that I like to teach people to do is prevent suicide. In 30 minutes, if you know how to talk and listen, you can help prevent a suicide and save a life. 30 minutes.
Wow.
And the main tool with that is to just ask flat out. Just ask questions. It doesn't hurt to ask flat out.
Wow. That's good. Well, I have a couple of other follow-up questions. So this is kind of circling back to our drug addiction.
Okay.
And what are kind of the early warning signs that that some loved ones, that some of the listeners out there, if they're concerned that their loved one might be starting down that path of addiction, what are some warning signs that they can look for?
That's a great question. The things that we see happen. Let me talk about teens first. Teenagers.
Okay. Yes.
A sudden change in the circle of friends brings on some suspicion.
Okay.
They stop hanging out with the kids they hung out with before, and they hang out with this other crowd. When the grades go down, that's an important sign that something will be off. When the kids smell different, and this is for moms especially. Women have a keener sense of smell than men.
Yeah.
And so when the kid comes in the house and you can smell different things, that's an important thing to watch for. Let's see, changing friends, the grades go down, the kids smell, they lose interest in things they used to be interested in.
Okay.
And when the kids come in and their eyes are really red and bloodshot and they're laughing inappropriately, that's a sign maybe maybe they've tried some marijuana. Marijuana isn't harmless. It's a powerful medication. It will drain away the kids' motivation. That's why the grades go down and they lose interest in things, the hobbies that they used to do.
Okay.
With alcohol, they'll come in, they'll be off balance, and they'll be slurring their speech. So these are ways to figure out if your kid has started self-medicating, started escaping from reality.
Yeah.
And if they have money that they can't account for, they suddenly come into a lot of money, or if they're taking money from their parents, that's a sign that they're on drugs. And if we translate these into adult terms, adults, if you see job performance go down, that's a sign. If they change circle of friends also, that could be a sign. If there's a lot of time unaccounted for, these days with electronics, people seem to keep track of each other a lot more precisely. And so that has revealed a lot of drug problems. The earlier we catch it, the easier it is to solve. So I really like that electronics are allowing us to be a lot more open. Information is power.
Absolutely.
And so when your wife did a lot of helpful things to help us with information that showed us that you had actually crossed the line and you were into dependency.
Yeah, no, I tried. I tried a long time, and Harold even supported me a couple times with the alcohol. I'm just a social drinker, and I can have one or two and stop. And
there were times when you could have two and stop.
Yeah.
But that's not the point.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
It was 2 turned into 3, 3 turned into 4, and then it was the 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, I'm going to go see my drug dealer and get my fix so I can stay up all night.
Yeah.
So it slowly got out of hand. It slowly got way out of control. I was spending tons of money.
It's very gradual.
Yeah, and
so the missing money thing is very, very valuable to know.
Yeah, and there's certain things that Kristen looks out for now that she questions me on. If something's out of the normal, like if I go to the ATM 2 days in a row, she'll question me about it. If I go once a week, she doesn't really say anything, and I'm not taking out the amount of money that I would need to support my habit. But it was it's certain things like that. If I change the password on my phone, because she goes through my phone every single night, I guarantee it.
And that's a good thing. So, you've married folks, I just want you all to know, openness, honesty, and transparency are the key elements here. Honesty is the foundation of recovery. We've got to be honest with ourselves, honest with our spouses and our kids. Honesty is the foundation. We got a special name for it. It's called rigorous honesty. And that means I'm more honest today than I was yesterday. And I'm more honest tomorrow than I was today. A growing honesty every day.
So besides the damage to one's like mind and body, what is some of the collateral damage from alcohol addiction to work? Like is it to work, is it family? What is some of the collateral damage other than just one's own physical?
Well, it does a lot of physical damage to the body. As Jason learned, the body bounces back. It's amazing. We've now with the brain research, we know that the brain has plasticity, and that means it prunes out nerve fibers it doesn't need anymore, and it adds nerve fibers to new ones. And so the brain will bounce back. It does take months.
It takes time,
but the brain will bounce back. But the collateral damage, so usually work is the last thing to go.
Really?
Because work provides the money, which provides the alcohol and drugs. So a lot of guys say, "Well, I don't have a drinking problem. I go to work every day." That's not the point. The point is, once you start, can you predict where it'll stop? That's the question. So a lot of guys, they will really put a lot of pressure on the marriage, and the marriage will be really damaged. A lot of people separate. The first collateral damage is really the kids. The time that we should be spending with the kids, we're spending with the bottle.
Harold, we sure appreciate you coming on and joining us back again for a brand new episode. That's all. I've covered all my questions that I have. Jason, do you have?
I don't have anything else either.
Anything else? Harold, is there anything you want to say to our listeners? A little message to everybody, or give out your credentials again or something?
Well, let me just say that something my sponsor told me. He said a lot of things that were really helpful early on. I think the main one was, Harold, your drinking is a search for God at the wrong address. That really helped me. And so I began searching for God, and I didn't understand the Bible, and I didn't really understand Jesus, but so I started reading. And so that's my number one piece of advice. Just open it up. It is the living Word of God. It's amazing, it's miraculous. And pray and ask God to help you understand it, and then read it. And read it again and again and again. And with these days, with the Bible app,
right,
it'll read it to you, and so that's really changed my life. And give me a call. Give me a call. I'd love to talk to you, and there's no charge. This is how I give back, and I only get to keep what I give away. So let me help you.
We'll put all of Harold's information down in the description below, so
Good.
you guys can, if you do want to give him a call or anything.
And there's one thing that I want to add to that my sponsor once told me is along the lines of reading the Bible every day and growing your spirituality and finding your place with God is going to be a big factor in your long-term success with addiction, because the enemy will tempt you every step of the way.
Yeah.
The enemy will tempt you in your dreams, when you wake up in the morning, in the evening, any time of the day. It will tempt you. So your closeness with God is going to go a long way.
That's it. You close the door on alcohol, and the enemy comes in through the window.
Yeah.
Some other way. Because you believe he hates you.
Well, I couldn't have closed it out better myself, guys. Thank you for joining us. Jason, thank you for welcoming us into your home so we can do these podcasts, and we'll see you all in the next one. Bye.